Hi, it's David Johnson. I'm a researcher and software engineer at the University of Utah, and in this video I'm going to give you a brief demonstration of Powder's automation framework and how it can be used to enable automated continuous O-RAN testing. Please do make sure to first view our overview video on this series, which describes the automation process at a higher level. Our demo shows how the Powder platform APIs and workflow mechanisms can be combined with industry-standard automation tools, including the StackStorm workflow engine, Ansible configuration management tools, and the Kiwi test case management system to run near real-time RIC and XApp scenarios. In this demo, we're going to be running some smoke tests on different versions of the ONF, the Open Networking Foundation's SD-RAN near real-time RIC, over a small set of Kubernetes configurations. When you go to powderwireless.net, you'll see our testbeds landing page, and if you get an account and click on the green login button, you'll be taken to your user dashboard. This is my dashboard. It shows me the current running experiments that I have. Experiments are containers of resources that have been allocated on the testbed. And I can also see a list of the profiles that I've written. Profiles are instantiated into experiments. Profiles define the resources that are going to be requested, or that a user wants to request and configure, and the Powder control framework turns those into experiments when requested. When we built Powder's automation framework, we opted to continue using the Powder profile mechanism as a building block. So the first phase was to create a workflow manager profile, and this allows a user to stand up a simple small VM experiment that contains the workflow automation pieces, StackStorm and Kiwi TCMS, to manage test cases in a private VM. So it's a private StackStorm environment, a private workflow engine. And I can quickly instantiate this profile into a running experiment by clicking this blue instantiate button. I'll be given a choice of parameters, and I'll need to provide some credentials so that the workflow engine can execute actions like creating further experiments on my behalf. It's probably a good idea to also create a shared VLAN so that this manager experiment can be connected to other experiments as throughout the workflow lifecycle. For instance, to connect to additional vendor or test tools. If I click through this wizard, the control framework will process my request and validate the parameter bindings. And if I continue to click through, it will end up creating an experiment. Now I've already created an experiment. So this is an instance of my workflow manager profile running on a single VM with that dangling pointer that's the shared VLAN to which nothing but this VM is currently connected to. The profile instructions point you to the StackStorm web interface and to the Kiwi test case management system web interface with a per experiment random password for each and user credentials. And I've already logged into the StackStorm web interface, and I've already used this StackStorm instance to run a number of workflows. So here you can kind of see the overall flow of one of these SD-RAN parameter space exploration or parameter test case exploration workflows. So the workflow simply starts by allocating a Powder experiment, and this uses our O-RAN Ansible profile. So it deploys a Kubernetes and SD-RAN using automatically generated Ansible hooks. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then it starts running parameter space loops. First, it loops over the Kubernetes configurations that we want to create. We're going to create, we'll start with our base configuration, and then we'll change network plugin or set the network plugin first to Calico and then to Flannel. And then within each of those explorations, we will run 2 iterations over SD-RAN deployment and smoke test, and those parameters, the SD-RAN parameters, will simply be the 2 publicly released versions of SD-RAN, 1.1.4 and 1.2.0. So within each of those iterations, we seed the test case management system with all of the test case metadata, the product, the build, the individual smoke test cases. We create the executions and collect all of these identifiers so that test case execution updates can be pushed from the workflow engine into the test case management system. And that's what's happening here in this sub-workflow right here, where the smoke tests actually are run. So SD-RAN was deployed, and or most of it was, and then the ONF ransom piece was deployed, waited for. Metrics are collected from all of these different things. So the RAN simulator has, in its default configuration, creates two Gnode Bs that connect to the RIC, and each of them has 3 cells, and the ONF KPI mon XApp connects and subscribes to KPM service model version 2 metrics. And then we collect those metrics, validate that the subscriptions are there, and trigger successful updates to the test case management system. At the end of each iteration, we do a teardown phase. So in this case, we're tearing down SD-RAN, and then we're going to stand it back up again with different parameters. At the end of the SD-RAN iterations, we will undeploy our Kubernetes by calling out to those Ansible hooks that were created by the experiment. And then we'll do another Kubernetes iteration, or a kubespray iteration. And if I go down to the bottom, after we do our final kubespray iteration, we'll terminate the experiment. And the test case management history will still be here, as will the StackStorm history. So let's go and look at the test case management system. So this is the dashboard. I've run a number of tests against this, or using this particular instance of Kiwi. So if I go and look at my test status matrix, I can kind of get a quick history of the executions that I've performed. So I saved this original test case execution so that there could be a demonstration of a failed test. And this one was not a failure of the ONF RIC by any means. This was a failure of myself to not properly gather metrics from the KPI mon XApp in the different ways that are required by the different versions. So you can see a test case failure, and that failed the entire test run. The others, of course, succeeded once I fixed my bug. So you can see that we're iterating over the SD-RAN versions, over different Kubernetes network environments. So we can look at test run 19 here. We can see the individual smoke test cases that were mapped to this overall test plan and this test execution. We verify that the RIC is running. We look for the ransom nodes to be connected to the RIC, and look for those subscriptions from the XApp, and verify that metrics are being collected. And I think we have some metrics output as a comment into this particular execution. So Kiwi gives you a good way to manage, administer, and monitor execution from your tests, and that's what we use it for. Kiwi is certainly not the only system that provides this kind of functionality. TestRail would be another one, but for the purposes of our initial integration, we decided to go with Kiwi. Our choice of StackStorm reflects much the same thinking. StackStorm is an industry-accepted workflow execution tool, and it has wide uptake and has many plugin packs that can be used to trigger all kinds of workflow automation. It's also open source. We wrote several integration packs for it. Obviously, the Powder integration pack that allows launching and termination and management of experiments. And then we wrote a Kiwi integration pack allowing for test cases to be controlled from within your workflows. Finally, the other kind of pack that StackStorm encourages you to create is our workflow packs, and these are not integration packs that allow or that provide StackStorm with actions that can be called on external systems to affect actions, but they are themselves collections of actions orchestrated in workflows. So the O-RAN pack provides several different workflows, and we can go and look at that over here. And the one that I had running when I started this demo was this O-RAN SD-RAN parameterized one. And I can easily run this workflow. The parameters all have default values that were configured automatically and deployed automatically by the workflow management profile based on my Powder environment. So I could click run here, and then this would restart, start a new iteration or a new instance of this workflow, a new execution of it. And so that will be going off to start creating a new O-RAN experiment. So that's kind of the end of this demo at this point. I'd encourage you to go to our website at powderwireless.net to learn more. Check out the manual in the docs area for more details on how to automate O-RAN testing on Powder and how to use our building blocks as part of that. In future versions of this demo, we hope to integrate more vendor tools, both test and actual O-RAN, RAN nodes, and XApps and RICs, and build out a test ecosystem. Thanks for watching.